Hello, friends, and welcome to the show. If you are not aware, Rush Limbaugh sadly passed away today. Whether or not you agreed with what he said, I definitely didn't agree with most of the things he said, but I do feel sad for his family, and my sympathies do go out to them because he is a fellow human being. However, the media is taking this moment to dance on his grave. They hated Rush Limbaugh. They hated what he stood for. They hated that he was a celebrated figure amongst conservatives who basically revolutionized talk radio and turned it into a conservative weapon. Basically, Rush Limbaugh single handedly took a dying industry and created a AM radio empire. So here's what Brian Stelter had to say. It's actually quite unbelievable. Here we go.
A pioneer of conservative media and a deeply polarizing figure, Rush Limbaugh became the most prominent political radio host in modern American history. Fans, known as ditto heads, cheered his brazen style, while critics blasted him for racist, sexist, and other offensive speech.
So remember that. So people celebrated his whatever style, and critics thought he was just a racist, misogynistic, and all of this stuff.
He accused actor Michael J. Fox of exaggerating his Parkinson's symptoms.
He is moving all around and shaking, and it's purely an act.
Women must decide their fate.
And he insulted a college student who advocated for access to birth control.
It makes her a slut, right? Makes her a prostitute.
After sponsors dropped his show, Limbaugh apologized for that one.
I again sincerely apologize to Ms. Fluke for using those two words to describe her.
In 2003, his stint as an NFL commentator on ESPN lasted only 4 weeks. He resigned in the face of public outcry after suggesting that Eagles quarterback Donovan McNabb was overrated because of his race.
The media has been very desirous that a black quarterback do well.
But Limbaugh's popularity survived all the controversies as well as his own personal struggles. In 2001, he suffered hearing loss from an autoimmune disease. 2 years later, he admitted a drug problem.
I am addicted to prescription pain medication.
Limbaugh was arrested for doctor shopping in 2006, but went to rehab and the charge was dropped. Through it all, he remained a hero to the right, defending Republicans from what he said was the biased liberal media. A conservative media icon whose legacy will always symbolize division.
So, I mean, honestly, that quote where let's see if I can rewind it to the perfect amount, but basically where he said he's protecting Americans or exposing the biased liberal left. Here we go. Let's play that.
Remained a hero to the right, defending Republicans from what he said was the biased liberal media.
defending Americans from the biased liberal media, as this is a 2-minute hit piece on someone who just died from cancer. Why don't you at least take 24 hours before you start running hit pieces on Rush Limbaugh, you disgusting human beings? Because this whole peeing on somebody's grave, pee in peace or rest in pee, and basically the profanity word starting with the letter P was trending on Twitter, and Twitter allowed it, right? So it cuts one way, and he's not lying. There is definitely a bias from the left. So that's the way they talk about an American, somebody who revolutionized talk radio. And they don't like it because he weaponized talk radio. He basically used it to rally the troops, if you would. Basically, one of the few ways to silence somebody is if you can be nationally syndicated as an AM talk show host. Everybody can get an AM station. Not everybody can get FM. So typically, if you're on AM, you have a wider reach. So let's see. Ben Shapiro posted some headlines of other prominent figures throughout society who have passed away in the past few years and the media's reaction to that. Fidel Castro, Cuban revolutionary who defied the U.S., dies at 90. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, I can't pronounce that, 89. The unwavering Iranian spiritual leader. Hugo Chavez, a polarizing figure who led a movement. Yasser Arafat's father and leader of Palestinian nationalism, dies at 75. So, and then we go to last year. Forget austere religious scholar. Check out the New Yorker's dreamy obituary. A flamboyant Qasem Soleimani. We've seen some weird stuff in the mainstream media lately. Well, weird for normal people, normal for journalists in the mainstream media. ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, according to the Washington Post, was an austere religious scholar, first and foremost. The members of Iran's Quds Force who attacked the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad were mourners, and terrorist Qasem Soleimani, who described by the Washington Post as Iran's revered military leader, despite people in Iran celebrating his death in the streets. Robin Wright tweets, was the assassination of Soleimani an act of war? It will certainly be read that way in Iran and across the Middle East. An epic turn of events in the world's most volatile region that may ensure Soleimani's influence even in death. My New Yorker analysis. But nothing could prepare us for the analysis of the death of Soleimani, written by Robin Wright, whose tweet I just read. Good morning to everyone except the New Yorker. Soleimani, a flamboyant former construction worker and bodybuilder with snowy white hair, a dapper beard, and arching salt and pepper eyebrows. They forgot to mention he was also a poet and told jokes. Anam of peace, pray for peace. Yeah, what? This dude killed was basically directly responsible for the deaths of over 600 American military men and women in Iraq and Afghanistan. This guy was also responsible for the death of countless numbers of people that he disagreed with politically. So what? This is bananas. You basically trash Rush Limbaugh because you disagree with him. You basically say everything he's done wrong. That's his obituary. Yet this guy is dapper and he's a bodybuilder and he's just so flamboyantly sexy. I just can't keep my pants on. What is this nonsense? And I guess it stands to reason because if you watched my last video, you would see CNN and NBC directly funded a domestic a domestic terrorist involved in the January 6th Capitol riots. And the kid was so extreme that basically that Antifa didn't even want him to be around. But CNN and NBC were more than welcome to basically bankroll a domestic terrorist who basically violently attacked the Capitol building of the United States of America. And they paid him $35,000 each. So, of course, they're going to like a terrorist leader because they directly fund domestic terrorism here in the United States. So who's to say, well, if you speak out against terrorism, apparently you are the enemy. But if you bankroll domestic terrorism and you write kind things about terrorists overseas, then you are a kind, warm-hearted, progressive leftist here in the United States. And that is disgusting. I'm sorry, you might disagree with Rush Limbaugh, and like I said, I don't agree with everything he says. I believe he says some things that are extremely just incendiary and for no reason to say it. But it's his right to say it. He is an American, and like it or not, he did. Basically, he is a symbol for a certain movement in the United States. And it's not racism, bigotry, whatever you wish to call it. Yes, the man has flaws. We all have flaws. But for you to point out the day he died, just all his flaws, none of the pros, nothing he did well, is disgusting, especially with terrorists who are directly responsible for the deaths of Americans. All you can do is keep yourself from basically filleting him. That is disgusting. How you sleep at night, I don't understand. I don't understand how Robin Wright will ever be able to live with herself because this is disgusting. And like I said, it makes more sense as time goes on because now that it's confirmed that CNN and NBC has directly funded a domestic terrorism operation here within the United States of America that happened on January 6th at the Capitol building, then it would make sense that these mainstream media outlets are pro-terrorism. So until there's something that can prove me wrong on that, unless they basically start funding anti-terrorist organizations, they're definitely, in my book, a pro-terrorist organization because they funded a domestic terrorism. They funded a domestic terrorist. They write nothing but nice things about actual terrorist leaders overseas. Yet Americans who they disagree with, they treat worse than terrorists. So judge people not by their friends, but by their enemies. And their enemies are fellow Americans, but all their friends happen to be terrorists. So apparently they're just enemies of the American people, enemies of the American people that they disagree with, which is extremely dangerous. Jack Posobiec, the Prime Minister of East Turkestan in exile, has slammed Biden's answer on Uyghur genocide last night. So before I show the video, please smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you'd like to contribute to the show, please go to notcensoredyet.com/donate. You'll find crypto links and fiat links available to help us out. Every little bit helps. We're planning some big changes for the website, and we wish to stay independent from outside influence. So let's see what Joe Biden had to say.
You know, Chinese leaders, if you know anything about Chinese history, it has always been the time when China has been victimized by the outer world is when they haven't been unified at home. So the central, to vastly overstated, the central principle of Xi Jinping is that there must be a united, tightly controlled China. And he uses his rationale for the things he does based on that. I point out to him, no American president can be sustained as a president if he doesn't reflect the values of the United States. And
so what does that mean? So no president of the United States could remain the president of the United States if he doesn't reflect the values of Americans, right? And he's basically saying that what Xi Jinping is doing in China with the Uyghur death camps, with the aggression towards Hong Kong and Taiwan, and basically the disappearing of any political opposition is just his form of control. He's reflective of the Chinese people because the Chinese people need to be strong. That's just weird.
So the idea, I'm not going to speak out against what he's doing in Hong Kong, what he's doing with the Uyghurs in western mountains of China, and Taiwan trying to end the one China policy by making it forceful. I said, and by the way, he said he gets it. Culturally, there are different norms at each country, and their leaders are expected to follow.
So Joe Biden is not going to speak out against a genocide, basically an ethnic genocide of the Uyghur Muslims, because it's not his place. He's being a moral relativist. Who am I to tell the Chinese president or the leader of China what he is or is not doing wrong, right? That is disgusting. So Salih Hudayar basically says, POTUS should know that nothing could be a justification for genocide. Hitler attempted to create a greater German Reich through aggression, invasion of neighboring countries, and the Holocaust of millions of Jews and others. Xi is doing the same thing today and must be stopped. Joe Biden doesn't think so. And is it because his family's on the take? His son still has a stake in a business owned by the CCP. And yet now Biden is basically saying, well, who am I to tell Xi that, you know, the systemic genocide or systematic genocide of the Uyghur Muslims is a bad thing? It is a bad thing because the unfettered murder of individuals is disgusting, right? The systematic, just we're going to wipe out the Uyghur Muslims because we consider them a stain on our society is disgusting. And yet Joe Biden can't say that. He basically says, who am I to tell the Chinese what is right or wrong? Because we're in America and that is China. China has their own set of morals, and they know that if they're not a unified China, they'll be taken advantage of. So the only way for them to be unified is to kill all those Uyghur Muslims. What? That's bananas. The president of the United States is pro genocide of the Uyghur Muslims. This is disgusting. If he's not willing to stand up against genocide, what else is he not willing to stand up for? I'll leave that. I'll leave you with that to chew on, friends. So I'll try to post another video tonight if power stays on. If it doesn't, I'll try to see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye.